tough, oh, you're so tough. You're so tough, oh, you're so. You're so, you like it too.
Hello and welcome to Every Takes, where I talk about a specific topic with a friend. I've been having a series of chats, and I don't know, this one I was like, ooh, I don't want to go there. But I mean, if there's someone that's super knowledgeable about this and knows how to treat such a delicate subject, it is my guest, my friend, super awesome, super smart, super fun to talk to, SeaAphrodite. Thanks for coming to the podcast today.
Thank you.
And the topic today is, well, one word, taboos. I mean, we kind of break it down, but yeah, taboos. So, first off, why do you think people find these things super interesting? And do you think like the internet has any plays any role in people finding the type of taboos they're into?
I think so. I mean, I think that we have certainly more sort of access today, right, to explore these things. But I also think there's something innate. These are not new. Nothing is new in the world. So if we talk about taboos, I know we're going to address, for example, race play. We're going to address, toilet play. We're going to address family or kind of, incest, right? Fake incest, type play. These are things that I think, humanity has come around to by itself,
Mm.
right? These kinds of taboos. There's obviously differentials between races, and there's a lot of history between, of kind of racial conflicts and racial dynamics, and they're different in different countries, by the way, right? Kind of what you have in the US versus Europe versus, other places in the world. And so people, I think, come to the table with whatever they kind of grew up with, right? And whatever is,
Right.
again, the culture of the place they live. And some people have more or less sensitivity to it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm from the former Soviet Union, which is a pretty kind of racially consistent place, right? Most folks in the former Soviet Union were white. And we don't have a history of slavery, for example, the way that we have here in the US. And so my sort of sensitivity to this issue, in terms of, let's say, the way you have sensitivity to kind of African Americans in the US, is just different. I didn't grow up in that context, right? And something that I had to learn. I think family or kind of incest play, again, it comes from, I'm sure, very few people at some point haven't been like attracted maybe to a cousin, or, I mean, some, like, especially young people, kind of growing up together. There's just a reality of that. And then there's kind of society that tells you no, because if there's a bloodline that's too close, right?
Mm-hmm.
We know why society sort of prohibits this, because obviously in history we know that if people intermarried very closely, you would have a lot of sort of birth defects. And so we've kind of, in some cases, criminalized, but certainly made taboo, these concepts of sort of being with someone who's closer to you, from a family perspective. But there's still these fantasies, right? Especially in mixed families where there's like step siblings or step parents and there's no blood relationship, right? And it could be somebody who's really attractive, like, and how do you sort of internalize that,
Mm-hmm.
right? That actually they're off limits. And then toilet play is an interesting one, because obviously it kind of, like, it has a lot to do, I think, with kind of self-value. Maybe it's a waste product. So the receipt of it, like, what does that do to you? Does it kind of lower you? Are you elevating someone else that you're taking it from? Are you showing like really significant, like, sort of like worship to someone because you desire them and value them so much that you even value the kind of waste they produce, right? I mean, these are kind of really interesting ideas, and I've seen so many variations of this where it is really psychological. Like, I've seen people who have struggled with like depression and other issues where this is like a way of working through this sort of catharsis, where they're saying, like, I want to feel like, I want to almost like demean myself in certain ways, right? But I control that, rather than society demeaning me in similar ways or making me feel like less than. So there's a little bit of like controlling the situation. So I think for me, and I know this is probably a question that you ask, when I am faced with one of these more taboo things, right? It's much more important to me than the kind of standard femdom stuff to try to understand where the person is coming from. Why are
Right.
you interested in this? Tell me about this interest in race play, and what are the structures around it? Like, what can I say? What can't I say? Like, what are the words that you want to hear versus the words you don't want to hear? What is the sort of scenario or the thing that we're imagining together? Where do we put the guardrails that I don't step over the guardrail? If it's, again, same thing, family, mommy, son, like I said, I'm a mommy dom, so there's like a slight element to it often,
Mm-hmm.
but some people want to go a little bit deeper, which I haven't done that often, but it's, again, or like even like adult baby, right? If somebody wants to kind of do diaper play and like, again, tell me where this is coming from. I want to understand, what it does for you. And then I have to decide whether that's okay for me. Because obviously I'm not just sort of delivering anything that anybody wants. I'm thinking about what I want too. And so there's some people that I'm willing to do things with, and some people that frankly I'm not willing to do those same things with because I just don't have the same feel for the person or the same dynamic with that person,
Mm-hmm.
so that it doesn't make it desirable for me. And then toilet play, I think, varies between the sort of water sports, which is golden, right, which is more common, and it's a question of whether it's on the body or if it's ingested. And again, it's a question of where the person is coming from. Like, what does it do for them? So, if somebody's saying, I just want to have you inside me, like, I want to walk away and have my stomach full of you, that's really interesting, right? Or somebody's saying, again, I desire you so much that I want to experience even this part of you and accept it.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's obviously scat, which is much more rare for me. And again, have done it where I really understand where the person is coming from, why it's something that they're into, like what it can do for them. Can I do it safely? I mean, I'm always thinking about that. There's certainly things that I say no to. I mean, I think into this category, maybe we didn't put like there's like sounding. I mean, that's not so taboo, but there's certainly kind of physical things that I don't trust myself with.
Right.
So where I don't have the experience, I've seen people do cutting. I've seen people do, fire. I've seen people do electro. Like more than just sort of, like average. Like purple wand kind of stuff. I've seen, people do needles. A lot of like blood stuff. Very very deep urethral sounding. Very very deep sort of anal play, like beyond like the normal kind of comfort area.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those people have medical training. It just, you have to kind of know yourself, right?
Right.
Where you say, okay, like this is what I am capable of, and this is where I cut it off because I think it's dangerous. And then there's obviously people who have fantasies that are just not okay. They're kind of like, I want to consume only waste for X number of days until I'm like, near death. I mean, that's not okay. And so in those cases, you sort of say, look, I think you may want to think about or explore like why you're feeling that way mentally,
Mm-hmm.
because it's probably not a safe thing to explore, right?
Right.
So I think, again, it's important to know where you draw those lines. But these are in particular kinks that are really, I know we've been going in our pod series from kind of the more general to the very very sort of specific,
Mm.
um, and I think these are really specific to individuals, and it's important if you're going to engage in them, as a dominant, that you really, again, understand the kind of the partner better, and you understand their needs better, and you understand the guardrails better, and you sort of take it on only if you really feel like you can deliver on it
Mm-hmm.
in a comfortable, safe way, which is how I approach it, and I mean that by both kind of psychological and physical safety.
Yeah, I mean, physical is is super important with things like this. But I love that you start with finding out why the person really wants to do this, and then you build it from there. And it's also something that you don't do as often because I think you might like. Do you find it tasking physically and also emotionally and mentally going?
Yes. Yeah, I do find some of it taxing. So it has to be a special
Mm,
situation. A lot of times it's happening with someone I have played with before, and I care about, I like someone that I know. It's harder to do it as like a stranger. I mean, it's not that hard. Like somebody says, I want to like meet you and pick up a bottle of piss. And I just like, here you go, enjoy, but I think a more ongoing or more personal, right? It is something that for me requires more of a relationship or connection or kind of knowing the person. Race play is a big one for me that way. I have partners who participate in scenes, often as tops, as bulls, right? Either for like women or for submissive males.
mhm.
And they're men of color. And a lot of times they're the ones who will eventually, when they are comfortable with me and they trust me, will articulate this fantasy. And I, like I said, my sort of threshold is like, do I know the person pretty well? And can they explain to me how it would work for them, like comfortably, so that I'm not at the end of the day offending them or whatever. I just want to be really careful about how I walk this walk, right? And so that's, like I said, usually comes from someone I know that way. And then the toilet play, like I said, sort of ranges, from something that's I think very simple to kind of like, hey, like, you come in the shower and I pee on you, is pretty, it's pretty de minimis, to the sort of consumption, which I think is more intense. Consumption from a scat perspective, the body doesn't always want to participate, like that's not an easy thing to produce, every time. Right? So it actually requires like preparation. You have to eat certain things like ahead of time. There's like, I have to kind of prepare for that. It's not like just off the cuff, right?
Right.
So again, it has to be like someone that I like know or have gotten to know, and I understand where they're coming from and why this is of value to
Hmm.
them and why it would, be good for them psychologically for whatever reason. And then I can put that effort in because it is obviously an investment of time and preparation.
Right. I guess, and then in general, though,
Mm.
how do we? I guess you said people it usually takes them time, to get there with you. Like, do you ever feel like, oh, it's about to come, or does it always come as a surprise when he does?
What's the time? Sorry, I'm not quite not sure I got the
No, like you
question.
said,
Yeah.
when the people you play with, it usually takes some time before they share these taboo kings they have,
Oh yeah.
right? Like, are you ever able to tell that it might be coming, or does it always?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I can usually tell something's gonna show up.
Okay,
Yeah, it's not like a totally out of the blue kind of thing.
right.
Yeah, yeah. But sometimes I'm surprised. I think I mean like for many things. Sometimes I've had the most sort of masculine partners, like very, very
Mm,
dominant, who just watch me for a long time in scenes, and they're obviously participating as a stunt cock, as a top.
mm,
And, I've got them in the role that they originally reached out to me about. They reached out and said, I want to be part of what you do, but this is the role that I would take. And it's a very sort of dominant, daddy type of role or
mhm,
whatever. And they watch me and they watch me. And let's say, a year goes by and they've been watching me in scenes. And all of a sudden they're kind of like, you know what? I would like to try the strap. I would like to try pegging. I would like to try, like I would like to experience like, piss play or whatever. Like, some of it is just proximity. People sort of see it. They see how much someone else enjoys it, right?
mm,
And then they're curious, so some of it is just exposure, I think.
right.
And sometimes it's surprising, but I kind of at this point I'm never really surprised. Like, why wouldn't somebody say, "Hey, this looks really pleasurable. Like, I trust you. I know you. Can you do this for me
Yeah.
too?" I get that. So yeah, I mean, I think the race play, it's interesting. I don't want to. I don't want to generalize because it's a really dangerous. Maybe you'll cut this part of the pot out, but like it's a dangerous thing to generalize about. But I will say I have often seen it with men who did not grow up in America, right? Which is
Oh,
an interesting thing because I think that they don't, again, have maybe the same like cultural baggage, perhaps, right? They come from another part of the world.
right.
The history and the culture there is different. And so it's just like a different dynamic to them,
Mm,
that maybe doesn't carry the same kind of pain or, like I said, sort of baggage that it might for people who grew up here, again, in certain cities of this country and have struggled in certain ways where like it's just not an area they would want to touch. And again, I know it's super sensitive, and some people have gotten mad at me, for some things that I've done and shown.
mm,
And I only show, I mean, very mild, I mean, versions of things, but it's always consensual. There's always the element the partner has asked for it, they enjoy it, they want it to be shown, right? Because obviously nothing is shared in terms of
right.
photos unless somebody's asked me to do that. And so, someone else getting angry on behalf of my partner is weird,
I think
where
that's
that
just an
person,
internet thing, really. People will be mad at anything.
yeah, yeah. Like I've literally had someone say, like, well, this is really wrong. And then my partner will comment, on the same
Mm,
post and say, but I'm an adult. I'm an adult. I'm a grown man. And I asked for what I asked
right.
for. And then the other person will say, well, that's very sad for you.
Oh
I mean,
God.
that's
Right.
ridiculous. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, because you're imposing, and often the person who's saying that is actually a different race than the person who asked for it,
Mm,
and is kind of speaking for them, which is again really strange. So like I said, I think you can never please everybody. It's just the reality. I think I try to be on the side of right, and maybe I misstep sometimes and make mistakes. It's probably that I do. Everybody does. So, like I said, my big thing for the taboo stuff is the extent to which I'm connected to the partner and
right.
feel that I understand
Yep.
them and I'm leaving them in a better place than I found them. And that's actually super big for me in every pod, like everything I do. Am I leaving my playmate better than they were when they came to me, or am I leaving them worse off? And that's the litmus test.
Mm,
You always want to leave everybody better than they were, with a memory and a good experience and knowing themselves better or whatever it is. Like you don't want to do damage, you want to enhance because this is all for fun, right? It's all meant to be a positive thing. So I do think about that a lot in each of these. And this is the one, like with the taboos, where I think about it the most because it's the heaviest.
mm,
Am I going to inadvertently do damage if I sort of give this person what they seem to be asking for?
right.
Or am I going is it going to be a positive at the end of the day? And if I can't sort of see my way to it being a positive, then I'll say no.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, there's no one that could have handled such a delicate subject the way you do. So thanks for sharing that. And again, thanks for coming to the podcast today, SeaAphrodite.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Mhm.
You're so thoughtful, you're so thoughtful. You're so thoughtful, you're so. You're so. You like it too.